Hey, it's Caroline from Sante Fitness. Today's tip is the hip hinge. I know it doesn't sound like really exciting or something that's really exciting, but when you get it, wow, what a difference it makes on all of your movements, on how you sit, how you stand, everything you do, and your lower back is going to love you, I promise. Okay, so here's the deal. We've got a pelvis or hips, that's this whole kind of section right here. It's the bone structure, right? So they come together. There's actually two sides of it, and they come together like this, okay? So you can see with my fingers, hopefully, maybe come closer. All right, so you have your front side and your back side. Your back side has your tailbone sandwiched in between the thumbs. The front side is the pubic symphysis. That back side you might know by the names of SI joints. If you've had SI or sacroiliac joint problems, that's what that is right there. It's where the two sides of the hips come together into that tailbone, which is the bottom of the spinal column. Okay, so hopefully you got that. Well, the problem is this. When we bend over, people tend to bend, and I know it's exaggerated because the little microphone pack here, so I don't actually look like that, by the way. Anyway, so it's exaggerated, but when we move, what most people do is they start to bend their back. So you see how my hip line, okay, so here's the shirt line right here, okay? Here's me standing nice and tall. And then most people will start bending like that. You can see the shirt line really isn't moving at all, okay? It's this shirt that is getting stretched on the back and getting bunched up in the front. And that's one of the ways you know that it's the lower back that is getting bent. What we don't want, we don't want that because the lumbar spine, which is the 5 vertebrae right there in that lower back, are not designed for forward movement really like that. I mean, they can do it, but over time, you will cause an improper balance and cause problems in that lumbar spine. We call it back pain. Anyway, so what instead we want to do is, like I said, we have those hip joints. They're like this, right? Well, they have these amazing spaces right here that kind of cup over a little bit, and they allow for the leg bone to fit right in here. Let's see if I can get it there. Okay, so the leg bone will fit right in here, okay? And depending on the shape of the little insert here and the top of the leg bone, the femur, that's how much mobility you actually have in your hips. So what we want when we hip hinge, we want this bone, and it'll be less exaggerated like this. We want this bone to move around inside of the hips rather than having the hip try to move or twist with the back, okay? So when we hip hinge, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about getting the top of that femur bone, which is like a ball, to kind of roll within the little hip insert or opening. Okay? So I like to just kind of find them. If I've been kind of lazy and starting to move my back and bend my back instead, I'll try to find those hip joints right here so that I can see that the pelvis isn't moving. And then I'll start to allow the leg bones to roll within. And I can feel it because I can feel a stretch happening here in the hamstrings. And that's one of the ways I know in my body that I'm getting the leg instead. And the result is that my spine is actually in the same position that it was when I was standing. So the spine itself hasn't shifted at all. The spine is still on top of the pelvis, fitted in right here with that rib cage. The rib cage space from the bottom of the rib cage to the top of the pelvis hasn't changed from here to here. It's still the same space. Another way to know that I haven't been squeezing here, because if I'm bending my back, the space from the top of the hips or the ASIS right here and the top and the bottom of the ribs would start to shrink. So that's how you would know it's your back, not your hips, okay? So that's the hip hinge. Why is that important? Well, because every time we do a forward fold like this, we have the option of either damaging our back or stretching our legs. Which do you think is a better idea? I'll give you a hint. It's not damage. Never is it damage in a joint. So instead, we're getting this lovely stretch in the hamstrings, which is what we want. The other thing is, whenever we are moving into a chair position like this, or whenever we are in our down dog like this, we are still working the hip hinge. Even here, I'm still using my hip hinge rather than my back. Very important. So at all times, am I keeping my back safe? And even when I come up, I'm bringing my belly button in between my knees or in between my feet, and I'm using the energy up the front of the body, the muscles in the front of the body, to lift me up. So still no pressure on that back. So that's the hip hinge. As you work it, as you play with it, you will find that the backs of your legs begin to stretch more, that your torso feels stronger and more stable, and that you can actually stand up taller. It's a pretty amazing thing. The hip hinge, definitely something you want to do in every movement that you make, whether it's in your practices on your mat or whether it's in your daily living. You will feel the effects of it right away, and I guarantee you will love your results. So watch this one again. If you're still not quite, if you're still a little confused, you still want to play with it, watch as many times as you need to until you really get it down, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.